Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to completely shatter a little illusion that most of us just casually accept every single morning. You know, when you go to the store and grab a carton of milk, it's really easy to think of it as just this static, completely uniform commodity. I mean, it's always white, it always pours exactly the same way, and it's always just sitting there waiting for your cereal or your morning coffee. But the reality? Well, the reality is entirely different. Milk is definitely not a fixed product rolling off an assembly line. It's actually a highly dynamic, ever-changing biological recipe. And I promise you, by the end of this explainer, you are never going to look at a simple glass of milk the same way again.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our micro to macro roadmap for understanding the exact variables that change milk's composition. We'll start with beyond the white liquid, move into animal and genetic factors, explore the role of environment, and finally wrap up with some unexpected wildcards.
Section 1. Beyond the white liquid, shattering the commodity myth.
To really grasp what milk is, we have to stop thinking of a milch animal as some kind of simple machine. Instead, we need to think of it as a highly sensitive, incredibly complex biological factory. And this factory? It is constantly tweaking and adjusting its recipe based on a massive array of very specific inputs. It's always calculating. So, I want to pose a direct question to you. Is every single glass of milk identical? Like, when you pour from a carton you bought today, is it chemically the exact same as the one you bought last month? The answer is a resounding no. The dairy products sitting in your fridge right now are literally snapshots in time. They are the result of a very specific set of circumstances that will never perfectly align in that exact same way ever again.
And this entire concept brilliantly illustrates our core takeaway. Milk is just so dynamic. It's this incredibly complex fluid where fat exists as an emulsion, proteins and minerals are floating around in a colloidal state, and lactose is in a true solution. But the proportions of all those ingredients, they're in constant flux. As you'll see, the chemical composition of just a simple splash of milk is actively responding to literally everything, from ancient evolutionary genetics all the way down to a sudden stressor, like a barking dog.
Let's get into Section 2, Animal and Genetic Factors, the Evolutionary Blueprint. You see, nature doesn't just produce milk randomly. It custom builds the entire recipe for the specific survival timeline of the newborn. And the contrast here is just fascinating. A species' rate of growth completely dictates the concentration of nutrients in its milk. Take a newborn kitten, for example. It has to double its birth weight in an incredibly fast 9.5 days. So to support that kind of rapid growth, cat milk is packed with about 7% protein. A lamb doubles its weight in 15 days, so sheep milk sits at about 4.8% protein. But humans? Well, we are famously slow growers. It takes a human baby about 180 days to double their birth weight. Because of that slow, steady pace, human milk actually has the lowest protein content among these mammals, hovering at just around 1%. Now, what's really interesting about this is how genetic selection plays a huge role, especially when we start talking about fat, which, let's face it, is the costliest and most prized component of milk in the whole dairy industry. If we compare different species, a Murrah buffalo produces milk with a massive 6.8% average fat content. Compare that to your average Western cow, which sits around 3.9%. Because fat is just so economically valuable, humans have spent generations selectively breeding animals to specifically boost this inherited genetic trait. But actually, scratch that. We don't even have to look across different species to see this genetic impact. It happens right within the exact same species. Different breeds of cows are genetically programmed to yield dramatically different fat percentages. Take the Jersey cow, an exotic breed. Its milk averages a super rich 5.14% fat. But then look at the Friesian breed, which averages just 3.45%. It's the same species, but with completely different internal factory settings, which results in a vastly different nutritional profile. Moving on to Section 3, the role of environment, weather, diet, and time.
Now we're zooming out a bit to the farm level to look at the shifting variables of time. Let's walk through how this builds across the animal's entire lactation cycle because time itself fundamentally changes the recipe. Right after parturition, giving birth, the fat content in the milk is really quite high. But then, as we move into those first 1 or 2 months of early lactation, that fat content dips to its absolute lowest point. Finally, as the animal enters late lactation, month 3 and beyond, the fat percentage steadily rises again while the lactose percentage actually takes a slight dip. So the recipe is very much a moving target.
Okay, let's give our brains a quick mental break with a really punchy stat, 85.5. What exactly is this?
Well, despite all this talk about complex solids, shifting proteins, and rich fats, the minimum water content in an average Western cow's milk is a whopping 85.5%. And some breeds can even have up to 88.7% water. It's just a great reminder that all of this incredibly rich, dynamic nutritional chemistry we're talking about is actually suspended in a massive amount of hydration.
Now, let's think about the calendar. The changing seasons act almost like a master chef, constantly tweaking the ingredients. The availability and the quality of fodder, which is the animal's diet, change dramatically with the seasons. And since all the precursors for milk constituents come directly from the animal's blood, diet is absolutely everything. In India, for example, the butterfat content in milk reaches its absolute peak maximum in the month of May. Fast forward to November, and that fat content drops down to its minimum.
And it's not just the month, it's the weather itself. During dry months, the total yield, so the actual volume of milk the animal produces, tends to decrease. But here's the catch. While the overall volume drops, the fat percentage actually increases. Conversely, in wet months, the animal's internal factory shifts gears again, leading to a decrease in both the fat percentage and the non-fat solids. Every single rainstorm, every dry spell, leaves a distinct chemical signature right in the milk.
All right, our final section. Section 4, wild cards, excitement, and exercise. We've talked about baseline genetics and the macro impact of the seasons, but what about the immediate, localized factors? So the crucial point is this. Milk production is an active, ongoing physiological function that is deeply tied to the animal's emotional and physical well-being. Hormones play a massive role here, especially right during milking time. The factory only operates at peak efficiency when the working conditions are peaceful and optimal.
When things aren't peaceful, the recipe gets derailed pretty fast. The source material lists out some highly specific and frankly very relatable wildcards. Simply put, harassment and frightening conditions disturb the animal and significantly reduce milk yield. And what exactly frightens them? Well, a suddenly barking dog, the presence of strangers they don't recognize in the barn, even the bursting of firecrackers nearby. It's almost humorous how relatable it really is. If you stress the cow out with loud noises and a bunch of strangers, she's simply not going to give you her best work. No way.
To really drive this home, the text states explicitly, harassment and frightening conditions disturbs the animal and reduces milk yield. This is exactly why modern dairy farming requires such a great deal of empathy and care. The milk is quite literally a reflection of the animal's immediate environment and their psychological state. You just cannot separate the final product from the process.
But on the flip side of those stressors, we have the incredibly positive impacts of regular exercise. When a lactating animal gets good, regular exercise, her blood circulation improves throughout her whole body. To build up an energy reserve for that exercise, she naturally eats more feed. This increased feed consumption indirectly boosts not only the overall volume of milk she yields, but it actually increases the fat percentage compared to a period of rest. Basically, a healthy, active animal produces a richer, better milk.
Which brings us to our final thought. I want you to think about the milk sitting in your fridge right now. What is its unique history? What specific breed produced it? Was it early or late in their lactation cycle? Was it a dry month or wet month? Did that animal get a good bit of exercise that day, or were they totally startled by a barking dog? Every single glass is a completely unrepeatable combination of genetics, environment, and daily mood. So keep that in mind the next time you pour yourself a glass. You're actually drinking a totally unique snapshot of biological history. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking questions about the world around you.